All right, so we're going to pick up now talking about storage. So we talked about encoding. Now, once we get it in, how do we keep it? Well, the capacity and the location. Okay, the brain is not like a hard drive. Your memories are not in isolated files, but instead are in this like a jumble of overlapping neural networks that are constantly crossing, constantly kind of mixing and interacting. The brain's long-term memory storage does not get full. It gets more elaborately rewired and interconnected. And parts of each memory can be distributed throughout the brain. So for instance, the memory of a particular kitchen table may be linked, maybe in a linkage among networks for kitchen, meal, wooden, home, legs, sit, or any other kind of connections you have to a kitchen table. So a guy named Carl Lashley showed that rats who had learned a maze retained parts of that memory even when various small parts of their brain were removed. So they would do experiments and stuff like that. And so what we know is that there's not one centralized location for memory storage. For short-term memory, we know that the hippocampus processes it, but once the hippocampus takes it and processes it, it kind of spits it out into kind of everywhere else in your brain. Now, in terms of, if memory is stored throughout the brain, how does it get in there and how do we retrieve it and use it? Well, there are different storage and retrieval activation systems in the brain for explicit or declarative memories and for implicit or procedural memories. When emotions become involved, yet another part of the brain can flag or mark some memories for quicker retrieval. And storage occurs by changing how neurons link to each other in order to make some of the well-used neural networks of neurons easier to activate together. So it's kind of like a keyword in a sense that, all these different neural connections have all these different keywords, and depending on what's activated, that's how we're going to that's how we keep them together in our brain. So in terms of processing these, the explicit or declarative memories, including facts, stories, meanings of words, such as, the first time riding a bike or facts about, types of bicycles, are processed through the hippocampus. So retrieval and use of explicit memories, which is in part a working memory or executive function, is directed by the frontal lobes. Okay, frontal lobes are in the front of your brain. The encoding and storage of explicit memories is facilitated by the hippocampus. Events and facts are held there for a couple of days before consolidating or moving to other parts of the brain for long-term storage. And much of this consolidation comes and occurs during sleep. Now, what about the implicit memories? Okay, so implicit memories, including skills, procedures, and conditioned associations, are processed by the cerebellum. And the cerebellum, sometimes referred to as the little brain, is this area kind of at the back bottom of your brain, and it forms and stores our conditioned responses. We can store a phobic response even if we can't recall how we acquired the fear. And then the basal ganglia, which is next to the thalamus in our brain. So if the thalamus is kind of this yellow thing, the basal ganglia is kind of right around here, controls movement and forms and stores procedural memories and motor skills. We can't learn to ride a bicycle, we can learn to ride a bicycle even if we can't recall having the lessons or driving a car or those kinds of things. Okay, so explicit memories are processed through our the storage process occurs in our hippocampus. Implicit memories, the storage process occurs through our cerebellum and basal ganglia. Now, what role do emotions and memories play, especially with storage? Well, strong emotions, especially strength, can strengthen memory formation. Flashbulb memories refer to emotionally intense events that become burned in as a vivid seeming memory. Now, flashbulb memories are not the same thing as photographic memory. A flashbulb memory is almost like a picture that pops into your mind. Okay, so it's like a still shot of some kind of a very emotionally intense event. Now, note that flashbulb memories are not as accurate as they feel. Okay, so even though that they are highly, they feel very, very vivid and true, remember, they're still going to be corrupted by all of that kind of emotional intensity. And vividly storing information about dangers may have helped our ancestors survive. Okay, so a lot of this kind of highly impactful emotional, especially negative emotions help with kind of survival. Now, what about stress hormones, the amygdala, and memory? How does an intense emotion cause the brain to form intense memories? Well, emotions can trigger a rise in stress hormones. These hormones trigger activity to the amygdala, located next to the memory-forming hippocampus. So the blue is the hippocampus, the yellow is the amygdala. The amygdala increases memory-forming activity and engages the frontal lobes and basal ganglia to tag the memories as super important. So as a result, the memories are stored with more sensory and emotional detail, and these details can trigger a rapid, unintended recall of the memory. And traumatized people can have intrusive recall that is so vivid that it feels like they're re-experiencing the event. Okay, so again, the more highly impactful and stressful the event, okay, the more likely it is that we are going to have a strong storage. But again, like we talked about before, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a lot of details in that memory, just that it is going to be a very strong and emotionally impactful memory. Now, LTP, or long-term potentiation, is what we refer to as the neural basis for memory. Okay, that is something that you have to make sure you know, that term, LTP, neural basis for memory. Okay, and basically what this is it's the strengthening of our neural networks the more often we use a memory. Okay, so chemicals and shocks that prevent LTP can prevent learning, and it can even erase recent learning. So preventing LTP keeps new memories from consolidating into long-term memories. For example, mice forget how to run a maze. Drugs that boost LTP help mice learn a maze more quickly and with fewer mistakes. So in summary, kind of the types of memory processing, remember in terms of storage and encoding, we have automatic and effortful. Okay, effortful are things like our explicit declarative memory processed in the hippocampus and the frontal lobes. Okay, and these are things like facts and general knowledge and personally experienced events. Now, automatic processing of memory are things like implicit memories, non-declarative, things that don't require conscious recall. They're processed in the cerebellum and the basal ganglia, and these are things like space, time, and frequency, motor and cognitive skills such as riding a bike, and classical conditioning, which is kind of like the reaction to the dentist's office, like unless you love the dentist's office. Okay, so again, in terms of storage, the big take-home message, we don't store them everywhere. We store everywhere. Okay, and then make sure you understand and can know what types of memories are processed, okay, and moved into storage with what part of our brain. All right, next time we are going to talk about retrieval and how once we've stored our memories, we get them out, which is one of the most important parts.